to jump into it?
Yep, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our session today. My name is Allie Moore. I'm the Director of Student Support for Future Focused Education. We are an organization out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We do a variety of different things from education reform work to supporting a network of charter project or industry-based, project-based learning schools, which you're going to hear a lot more about in our presentation. And we also run a paid internship program for our young people as well in our communities. So welcome today. Here's a list of our presenters. They'll be able to introduce themselves when they speak more thoroughly than I would be able to. But just to give you a sense, Cynthia Ramirez is on the line. She's the Director of Student Support at Technology Leadership High School. Nathan Hoagie is the Director of Student Support at Health Leadership High School, him and his cat saying hi over there. And then we have some rock star student interns that are also going to be presenting today. Savannah Wheeler, who's a senior at Health Leadership High School, and then Jacqueline Sanchez, who's a senior at Cuba High School. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Cynthia to jump in and talk about the Leadership Schools Network in her school.
Okay. So I was waiting for you to do another slide, so that's why I was thrown off.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. So hello, my name is Cynthia Ramirez, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a Chicana born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm a first-generation college graduate. I'm a school social worker and licensed clinical social worker by trade. And so I became an administrator after working for Albuquerque Public Schools for 11 years. And then we decided to open up a public charter school, Technology Leadership High School, about 5 years ago. So along with that, I'm a Deeper Learning Equity Fellow. I'm a GLSEN Albuquerque board member, a Zumba instructor, a daughter, a sister, a mom, and a partner. I tell you all of this because today we're talking about our paths and just how we got to where we're at right now with education. We're not trying to, sell something. We're not here to sell a product. We're not here to sell a program. We're just here to talk about best practices, that we responded to after trades were phased out of our schools because of Common Core. We're 50th in education in the nation. We're, I think, like 49th in child welfare. So I tell you about my path because we say at Tech that everyone has a path, whether you're a student, a staff, family member, community partner, whoever, like virtually now, or, physically goes into our building, that we are creating a path together after that. From that point, when we meet at Tech or we meet at any of our leadership schools, we're creating a path together. And that we have a responsibility and a privilege to walk alongside our youth to help them in developing their path. And if we don't define our story, someone else will try and define it for us. So this was the path that we went on about opening a set of schools that did something different to educate students. So we're here to tell you about how we responded to the needs of our community and unapologetically center equity and social justice and put those as equally as important as academic rigor. And so as we tell you about our path, we want you to reflect on yours, to really look at, is there any pieces of either systematically or even just the day-to-day that you can put into practice. And we're here as a resource. I'm always on the phone or emails with people talking about the work that we do. So if you can go to the next slide. Oh, right. Oh, wait, no, go back. Sorry, you were at the slide I needed to be. Okay, there we go. Okay, she's on top of it, Vanna. So I appreciate it. All right. So we have the 3-pillar model, and every school in our network of schools uses this 3-pillar model. And I don't read slides verbatim, so go ahead and look at it. It drives me crazy when people read them verbatim, so I won't. But the learning by doing model, that pillar, what it does is we focus on project-based learning that the learning by doing that relates to community and real world problems. So we create projects that integrate core academics and critical thinking and 21st century skills and social emotional learning standards into our projects. So for example, we hold ed cafes where we bring in community partners, students, staff, families, and we pitch project ideas. So the project, then the learning by doing project would be rolled out by 2 co-teachers, because we have a co-teaching model. And at the end, instead of a final exam, they hold an exhibition as a performance assessment of learning. And so the students present on their learning. They can present in their first language, whether it's Vietnamese or Spanish or whatever it is. And so when students present on their learning, the teachers, the community, everybody who is a part of our family, our work family, then goes into judging and giving feedback and being a part of the learning cycle. So teachers have 20 plus days of PD a year to develop projects and advisory. Again, we have the co-teaching model. And so for the next pillar, we have community engagement. And so what that pillar does is we integrate service learning, paid internships, explorations. We engage community partners to assist teachers with projects. So for example, we have a Power to Survive project where we asked the government around our city what would happen if our power grid was taken out, by a terrorist attack or, something. And so they said, well, it would take about 6 weeks to get a power grid back up to running where it should be. So the Power to Survive project was done in collaboration with government, with the utility company. And so we had people from PNM who would come in and help run labs, would help speak, would help inform teachers learning about the project, and students actually learned how to survive. They made solar ovens, how to filter water, just based on things from the home. So what we do is our projects are can't be done without the community engagement. And so those 2 pillars, there's a lot, and this is why in the 3-pillar model, it converges in a lot of spaces. And what we call the convergence in the middle is like that sweet spot, because along with the learning by doing and the community engagement model, we have the 360-degree support, which I'm a director of. And so all of our students receive school social work services. So let me repeat that again, because it's something that isn't precedent, at least in our state. Every student that we have, whether they receive special education, regular education services, whatever it is, they receive school social work services. So they're entitled to receive individual and group therapy services, case management. We do crisis intervention and support. So every student we have at our schools, they receive an intake to help determine needs, inform practice, what kind of groups should we have, what advisory activities should we do. Every student at Tech completes a daily check-in with a Likert scale of 1 through 10. So we use that data in 2 ways. One is that students can see in the moment, what are they feeling on the Likert scale? 1 is I'm awful, 5 is I'm okay, 10 is like I'm great, the sun is shining. And so we get that data, and it informs the teachers as well, because if a student is usually an 8 and then they come in at a 2, you're going to approach students differently. So it informs the teacher to triage in that moment, but it also gives long-term data month by month, week by week, overall year for students and staff to see what are their ups and downs, to really be conscious and aware of what they're walking in the building with. So we also implemented an advisory framework at our schools that was developed with community to integrate developmental assets from the Search Institute and social emotional learning standards. So the social emotional learning standards are informed by CASEL and the Department of Education from Illinois, because we don't have social emotional learning standards for New Mexico. So us opening a school where we wanted to utilize social emotional learning standards, it was brand new. our focus on each year of advisory is 9th grade, we do identity development and healthy relationships. 10th grade, we do leadership identity and healthy self. 11th grade, we do increasing social consciousness through action. And then 12th grade, the students came up with it. It's not where you've been, it's where you're at. And then they were like capstone seniors, the future is theirs. So the convergence again of the 3 pillars, Nathan will talk about more because we're going to talk about our culturally and linguistically responsive framework. But Ali, if you could go to the next slide. So each of our schools, they were created due to community need. We needed to figure out not only how was our community going to function, but how was it going to thrive? And so we approach our youth in the same way, that each youth is a community asset and they have strengths. And how do we tap into those strengths? And so how do we get our students from functioning as students to thriving as young people who are then going to stay in our community and then increase the economic sustainability? So the idea was community forums were held across the city. And these were the 4 areas that we really felt needed to be addressed for the employability, for the work skills, to create a stronger workforce for generations to come. So that's why we have ACE, which is architecture, construction, and engineering. We have health leadership high school, technology leadership high school, and Siembra leadership high school. And Siembra leadership focuses on entrepreneurship. So looking at small businesses, looking at business structures, business plans. And so each of these schools, we integrate the 3-pillar model that I explained to you about learning by doing, about community engagement and 360-degree support. So the core pieces of that is what our schools are based on. However, the focus is to college, and then the career focus would be, these and related to these. So for tech, because I'm one of the directors there, we always talk about, well, tech kind of integrates anything, but we also have to help our students learn how to use technology responsibly. So when they walk the building, we're kind of a low tech school, considering they're like, where's the green room, miss? Where's this and that? What we're about is how do you use technology in a way that it emphasizes efficiency, but it's not the whole thing that makes you efficient. And so each of our schools, I get excited to talk about them because it took a lot of community work for them to happen and to occur. So, okay. So the reason also, so if you go to the next slide. Okay, so what happened with the creation and purpose, why did we even create a culturally and linguistically responsive framework, and so which is otherwise known as CLR? Why we created it was because we knew we had to do something different for students, and at the same time, these schools, we've been around between 10 years and 3 years, and so we did not want the model, the learning by doing, community engagement, and 360-degree support to go away or to be changed. So we needed some way to institutionalize something about our model, our 3-pillar model, to replace that oppressive institution of systemic racism, right? So we wanted to replace the traditional school model. And we wanted to institutionalize what we knew as best practice, but we didn't want it to go away if a principal or executive director left, right? And so the CLR framework really helped us also onboard new staff and onboard new students, because it's a paradigm shift. You go from traditional school, traditional methods, and we are asking you to turn it on its head and be so much more for students. And so the creation of this was to, again, institutionalize some meaning of integrating positive youth development and resilience theory, and then getting the 3 pillars and centering equity and social learning standards and social justice as a model for best that would continue for generations. So if you'd go to the next slide. So why did we create this? So the thing is, we know, like 2 years ago, I could tell you that 40% of our school population at Tech had students that were out of school 6 months or more. And so when I tell you that we're in the business of not only educating students, we're in the life's work of developing young people. It is taking that academic rigor and it is looking at addressing the needs of students, but how do you address the needs if you don't have a way of assessing what those needs are? So integrated in our system, we were already doing that. So what happened is the Young Martinez v. State of New Mexico lawsuit happened in 2018. And so what Judge Stapleton ruled was that New Mexico was failing to provide sufficient education to all New Mexico children. So in the ruling, it specifically named low income, Native American, English learners, and students with disabilities as populations of students that did not receive an adequate education for them to learn and thrive. And they went further to say that the state did not adequately fund schools to support these populations of students. So what happened was the schools fought back and said, well, we didn't have the funding. Where are we going to get the funding? And so Judge Stapleton said, a lack of funds is not an excuse to not provide the education. So she ruled, as part of the ruling, is that the funding needed to be found. And so we needed to give an adequate and sufficient education to all students. So out of this, equity councils were mandated as a way to meet the requirement for the lawsuit. So again, coming from a place of competence, all of our schools across the state are in the process of creating and establishing equity councils. And why do any of these councils, and what does equity mean versus equality? So we have a lot of work ahead of us, especially in the district schools. But inherent in our schools, we had equity at a center. You know, social justice, equity, safety. You know, we say Maslow's wild blooms, not Maslow's before, right? And it's this piece of the deeper learning that the learning by doing methodology allows, that students need to feel safe emotionally, mentally, physically, so that they can engage on a deeper level for learning. So for our schools, the 3-pillar model was inherently built with the equity and all of that in mind. And because we're paving a new path for New Mexico schools and also schools in Memphis, because we're supporting schools in Memphis as well, how do you measure equity? And how do you measure the work? And what if we're doing works, right? So now that we're in the process of renewing our charters, I can say that with a resounding yes, that what we're doing works. However, it's not something that can easily be measured, you know, social emotional learning standards, or how do you measure equity? And so I know that I covered a lot in a short amount of time, but this was our path. And so it led us to the CLR framework. And Nathan, what he's going to talk to you about is really going over, this is the heart of our work, to onboard new people, but also to bring back to the mission and vision of our schools. It grounds us in the why. I mean, we can't see our students' faces now, and it's heartbreaking. But at the same time, in doing this work and seeing them visually and, you know, like at least virtually, it grounds us in the why. So I just want you to reflect on your path, on your why. I can tell you I'm so passionate about this, and I'm excited to talk to anybody about it, but I'm going to pass it on after I threw a lot of information at you. We're going to be available for questions, but really we want to hear from our students too, of the work that's being done. So thank you.
Nathan, are you with us?
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, y'all. I'm having a little bit of technical issues here. So as long as you can hear me, that's good. I apologize, my camera just stopped working. But my name is Nathan Hoagie. I'm the Director of Student Support at Health Leadership High School. And I just wanted to take a minute to kind of explain this visual representation of the CLR framework. So again, just kind of as a reminder, the CLR framework really drives educators to take culturally and linguistically responsive actions and to develop learning environments that really contribute to individual student engagement, learning, growth, and achievement, really through the cultivation of critical thinking that'll lead to positive academic outcomes for all students. So the implementation of our CLR framework serves to validate and affirm individual students' home culture and language to create connections with other cultures and languages in a variety of social contexts. So this helps to prepare students for college, career, life, by supporting their identity and holistic development, including social, emotional, and physical well-being. So this visual representation shows how the model drives school practices that support equity and positive youth development. Cultural and linguistically responsive practices are central to this model. So you can see that they live really in the very center. You see that CLR right in the middle of the convergence of the three pillars. Outside of the three pillars, you see a dark gray ring with several little blue circles on it. Those circles are our critical core practices. And these come out of the three pillars and also inform the work of the three pillars, which is really what's foundational to centering and promoting equity. So everything we do, all of our work is informed by social emotional competencies. So that's the outermost ring. And we work to build these competencies into everything that we do with and for our students and staff. So to take it a step further, each of our critical core practices are then operationalized. And this looks similar in each of our Ellison schools, but it does vary depending on the nature of our school's industry-specific focus. So I'll go in a little bit into how that might look. So for example, for the very bottom circle, Ellison Design for Learning and Mastery-Based Assessment. We operationalize this through our learning by doing, our project-based learning, through our service learning framework, through industry partners that facilitate experiential learning, and through creating a inclusive setting for all learning abilities. We also, have project development and assessment that integrates family, parent, industry, community, and student voice. If you look at safe learning environment, we operationalize that through our intake assessments for each individual student to assess strengths and needs. This is also where our 360 degree of support model lives. So emphasis on social, emotional, physical well-being. Also a discipline model that promotes restorative justice practices rather than a punitive approach to develop relationships and build collective culture that facilitates nonviolent solutions to conflict. This is also where things like student-led spaces live to promote positive school culture. So we have an equity council, SHAC, student council, and all of our students, as Ms. Ramirez had mentioned, have access to individual and group services to meet individual student needs through social work support. In terms of our community and family responsiveness, we operationalize that through volunteer work that raises awareness of community resources and needs, through developing student social consciousness via emphasis on community action, through student projects that help to facilitate a process to explore community needs and barriers, and through project outcomes where students develop real-world solutions to enhance community well-being. Our positive youth development is operationalized by using a strength-based approach to increase students' developmental assets. So this helps to improve their ability to cope, navigate, critically evaluate, and overcome challenges so that they are prepared and can excel at a high level socially, emotionally, and academically. The integration of our cultural identity and information is done through our advisory framework, where the emphasis is on building relationships, knowing our student population and their needs, and who the student body is collectively so that we can tailor delivery of services and education. It's also done through our internships, volunteering, and projects that increase social consciousness through community organization. We also use culturally responsive language to increase access to meaning. And we empower our students by just ensuring that we have spaces where we can talk about our collective culture and our identity. We also, another core competence or core practice is primary language support. So these are things like ELL strategies, strong awareness of language support needs, being responsive to our use of interpretation. Learning by doing also allows for students to start where they're at. So what I mean by that is starting where they are in terms of their language comprehension and understanding. We also, we also do practices like approaching our escalated students in their first or preferred language. And if that's not possible, then we're conscious of it, right? And we try to work to access appropriate resources. With regard to our industry-focused technology, this really is speaking about how we utilize multiple forms of technology that can be adapted to meet linguistic, academic, and functional needs of varying students. It's also, what we also do is we also leverage industry-focused or industry-specific technology platforms, devices, and tools to support experiential learning in a variety of occupational fields. So being from tech or being from health leadership, we have like a sim lab, and we have medical devices and medical dummies that students can practice, like taking blood pressure or doing IVs and things like that. So that's kind of some of the industry focused technology pieces. And then finally, but certainly not last least, is multiple opportunities. So we provide a variety of different opportunities for students to exceed and excel. So those could be paid internships, service learning and community volunteer opportunities. We have a re-engagement school for students who can't attend maybe a traditional school model day school. So we offer learning opportunities in the evening. We also have dual credit and in-house certifications. Distance learning, development of life skills, sports, clubs, tutoring, councils, things like that. So all of that comes together to create equity and really a student-centered model for learning and 360-degree support of our students. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass it along now to Ali, who'll provide some more information on the CLR framework in action.
Rookie mistake. I was on mute. So thank you so much for hanging in. Like Nathan and Cynthia said, it's a lot, it's heavy, right? So I'm just gonna like kind of shake it out a little bit to just shift gears. So now what we get to do is really be able to illuminate the CLR framework in action. So taking it from the theoretical in this heady space of thoughtfulness to then looking at it in action. And so again, I work for Future Focused Education, and I'm trying to change the slide. There we go. And we're a nonprofit that invests our best ideas in underserved students and communities because we really believe that young people and that schools are assets in our communities that can be leveraged to support and cultivate a healthier, more prosperous community and future for all. And so really come and Nathan had talked about that frame, right? When we really view our young people as assets and agents of change, we work really hard to position and create opportunities to position them in roles of leadership to be part of making that change in their own community. And so the internship, the paid internship program is an example of putting that into practice. And so our X3 paid internship program, I have a pre-COVID and a what's happening now with our program in terms of just showing how we've had to adapt. Before the pandemic, it was an internship program that placed students in employer sites. We have about, I think we're upward to almost 70 different employers in our state that we're working with that take our interns. And they work for 13-week sessions, 12 hours a week, and they're compensated with a monthly stipend that's approximately $10 an hour. But in the middle of the pandemic, we had to do like everybody else has had to do, pivot, adapt, and shift. While we really are still committed to creating meaningful opportunities for our young people to get work-based learning skills, support with transitioning after high school, career development, and truly like some mentorship and some really positive developmental relationships with adults in their life. And so the first iteration of this virtual internship pivot was an internship that we ran for 6 weeks. At the end of our summer, we called it the Student Approved School Reentry Consultancy. And consultancy meaning we positioned young people to show up in that space as experts of their lived experience with distance learning, with the pandemic, with their community and family, and paired them with employer mentors, a doctor and then a med resident from 2 of our biggest hospitals here in New Mexico, as well as 2 adult facilitators to guide them through this process. And they were tasked with this dilemma that we really recognized schools were running at a sprinter pace to try to submit school reentry plans to the public education department and figure out what that was going to look like. And there hadn't been, because of the pacing, this opportunity to really offer a space of reflection to our biggest constituents, the people that we're serving, and that's our young people, our students. And so this internship was an opportunity to bake in some of that reflection and learning to really pull from the students. And so their work-based deliverable was to essentially do a policy analysis of the public education department's recommendations that they put out, as well as a chance to read their own schools submitted school reentry plans and have conversations about it. And then from there, in consultation with those medical professionals, come up with some student approved recommendations for school reentry. And they wrote this really beautiful guide. So I'm gonna stop talking because I think it's a whole lot more powerful to hear the experience from the young people themselves. So I'm going to pass it off to Jacqueline Sanchez to kick us off to talk about it.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Sanchez. I am a senior at Cuba High School, and I was asked in August to participate in the COVID-19 Student Approved Reentry Guide. Basically, over the course of, I want to say it was 8 weeks, it wasn't 6 weeks, but anyways, we participated in 2-hour a day for 2 times a week sessions where we collaborated with other or fellow interns from different schools to create this guide. And the most important part of creating the guide for us was to make sure that students that were otherwise underrepresented were represented in this guide. So having read our own reentry guides and the PED guidelines, we came up with ideas that were suitable and preferable to our own ideas of what we wanted to see when we returned to schools or to school, but also what we would like to see done for our peers that needed some more support or needed extra help during this time. So each of us took on a different section that we had come up with for our guide, and we wrote our own suggestions based on the conversations that we had had while collaborating in these meetings. And again, the biggest focus was to make sure that everyone was equally represented and that we could come up with something that was beneficial not only to our preferences, but to everyone that was going to be involved. And really just from the student perspective, like what we wanted to see in our schools, because a lot of the guides and reentry plans that have come out lately are really focused on safety and not necessarily focused on the students' happiness or what we're going through. but they are in place to keep us safe. So while considering safety, we're also considering our own personal pleasure and enjoyment. And then again, taking on that, the perspective of students that needed that extra support to make it a fair chance for everyone. So by the end of it, we had created a student reentry guide, or student approved reentry guide, and we presented them to our schools with our fellow interns.
Fantastic. All right. Now Savannah's going to walk us through this table of contents and some additional work.
Hi, my name is Savannah Wheeler, and I am a senior at Health Leadership High School. And I was also given the opportunity to participate in the student reentry consultancy. So here shown is just the table of contents, and within the table of contents, this is some of the main topics we wanted to focus on. So I'm just going to go over a few of them. So one of the main focuses was having technology access while we are distance learning. And some of those ideas we came up with were maybe having access to mobile hotspots, because not everybody and not every student has access to technology to be able to complete their schoolwork. And so we came up with just different ideas for students to be able to have access to mobile hotspots in order for them to complete the work they needed to do. And then we focused on out of school time activities. Sorry, my dog is barking. But we wanted to focus on ways to de-stress and stay busy aside from learning. And then we also focused on transportation and food distribution. So a lot of students don't necessarily have the access to transportation in order to get food if they need. So with that, we came up with different ways, like Meals on Wheels, which is usually provided for students. They will go and park nearby a school, and they will give you access to the food that you need. And so we thought that that would help, because not every family does have access to food. And so one of the main ones I focused on was peer support, and we came up with that just to have the students stay connected to their peers and staff during this time, because now with distance learning, it tends to be lonely. So we didn't want them to feel like they didn't have anybody there. And we came up with different ideas for them to stay connected with communications such as Zoom, along with other apps such as GroupMe, or just ways of meeting that is safely.
So now that we heard some of the logistics, this is really like the juicy part of the experience, right? So what was the meaning that this had for you all as students? And then what impact did it have on your school and community? So Jacqueline, if you wanted to get us started talking a little bit about that.
Yeah, so again, I'm Jacqueline. So prior to being asked to join this internship or be a part of it, I had actually read my school's reentry guide, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. I didn't feel like it took into consideration the student perspective. So I had some questions and concerns myself, but I didn't really feel like I had a place to talk about those concerns where they would actually be seriously considered. So being asked to do the internship, I was really excited to have that chance to really have my voice heard in a way that I didn't really think would happen otherwise. So throughout the course of the internship, we came up with these suggestions for our schools. And when we presented them, the section that I had done was communication, and I had taken some suggestions from my peers, my fellow interns, that they had implemented in their school, or that their schools had implemented. And I put that into my suggestions because I really appreciated it. And about 2 weeks after we did our presentation, our principal actually did take some of those suggestions, and now some of the things that I suggested about communication are actually playing out. Like, we do actually get those memos that were part of my suggestion, and it was really empowering to have my voice heard in that way. Like I said, I really didn't think that I would get the chance to say anything, but I didn't want to just be complaining. I wanted to see change happen. And through the internship, we were able to make that change happen. In addition to the communication and how it's actually played out, we felt, or some of my peers from my school in the internship felt that there were parts of our reentry guide that could raise problems, racial problems specifically. Our transportation plan was kind of questionably going to raise some problem or some issues, raised some concerns, I'm sorry. And we really wanted the school to know that we had those concerns, because often we don't get to share those concerns with our administration. They're the ones in charge and we're the students. But after the whole after the internship and our presentations, when they started to implement some of those suggestions that we had, I felt like maybe the other suggestions or the other concerns that we had brought up were really going to be addressed, because they had taken us seriously, like we were really respected. And that was such an empowering moment for me as a student, and especially as a student at my school who has felt kind of quieted by our administration other times. So this was a really good experience in that sense. But also in a professional sense, I felt like the internship being virtual, I had never done anything like that before. And our mentors made it such an incredible experience. It was so easy to share and collaborate. And it was just a really safe place to get our ideas out there. And overall, I feel like the experience has really prepared me for a future in any career, seeing as though technology has been around for a while and will probably continue to be around. Zoom meetings like these might be more prominent in the future, and not just because of the pandemic, but in general for careers. And so I feel like this really made me more comfortable on this platform, and made me more comfortable in my ability to share my thoughts and concerns in a respectable but also very assertive way. So yeah, I think it was all in all a good experience. My fellow intern, Savannah, will now share about some of these things.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Hi, I'm Savannah again. I can completely agree with Jacqueline on our mentors being super supportive with this internship. I feel like they provided a platform that was like non-judgmental, and we got to share our ideas equally without there ever being a concern. And so I feel like I was very grateful to get this opportunity, because I had never like done something like this before. And so it really helped me like understand like different safety precautions, and just like being able to work together as a team, especially because we're not all from the same school. We got to hear different perspectives and different ideas, and then all together we came to one idea as a whole, and we got to just like learn each other and learn about different things we necessarily hadn't learned before. So I feel like with this internship, it really taught me things I'm gonna need for the future. And I wanted to focus on really the peer support and safety, because it's easy for us as students to feel like we don't have anybody. And so that was one of the main focuses we focused on in the internship, just along with communication. And it really tied into me being in the equity council at my school, because we were able to represent it as a whole, being able to tie it in with different opportunities we received within the reentry internship. So I feel like I was just excited to be able to get this opportunity, because not all students do. And so I feel like I really received a lot of knowledge that I didn't before. So I was very grateful.
Thank you, Savannah. Thank you, Jacqueline. You rocked it on the virtual platform even. So the other thing I just wanted to put out there, that these two rock stars also were featured in a local news article that just came out last week from the Las Cruces Sun-Times. And so I'm hoping that maybe one of my teammates can cut and paste the link in, or it is available with our slides. So with that, we'd like to open it up to any questions people may have. Or comments. I mean, questions or comments.
And so you can post questions in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. And we always, are excited when we have our youth present. Again, Savannah and Jacqueline, I appreciate you both because, when we truly say we're in this work and putting our money where our mouth is, that are we really truly doing this work? You all highlight it beautifully. And so I just appreciate you both being a part of our paths as well as letting us be a part of yours, just a whole thing. So thank you for that.
I'm kind of curious to hear for those that attended, where you all are coming from. Are you youth-based organizations, schools? And do you see any part of the framework or the experience shared like something that you could adapt or integrate into your work?
Yeah, because I think in work and I mean, I'm good with silence. I'm a clinician, so we can sit in silence all day. But also too, I want, this is an opportunity to give you information as well. So until Nathan says, hey, Cynthia, be quiet, somebody did ask a question or somebody, stop me. Equity work, I had a mentor tell me, are you really doing and stating what you set out to do? So when we talk about equity work, when we did our recharters, because we're up for renewal every 5 years because we're a public entity, and we had went from a state oversight, the public education department was our oversight. We went to the Albuquerque Public Schools, and so we're publicly funded, and that I know is different than other charters sometimes across the states where they're managed by CMOs. And so for us, when we rechartered and did our applications this year, we put equity in there. We explicitly state we use social justice and equity as lenses, that we also have social emotional learning standards. And so that whether they're mandated or not, this is what we're doing. And so when you talk about equity work in your schools, is it starting with a council? Is it starting with one person? Is it starting with a PD? Is it looking at, is it in your policies? Is it written within, the framework of your school and the model? And how does it sustain itself if the leader or the admin changed? So those are some of the things that we wanted to pose questions to you about. See if you had questions for us on how we've managed those things. And I hope, before anybody leaves, that this was helpful in some shape or form. Please reach out to us at any time you have a question or a concern. But also, if you could just put your name and what state you're coming from, and then, what you hope to get out of today in attending, and, so that we can kind of get some feedback if we covered it or not. I appreciate it. Okay, so thank you. So there's a question there. It says, is there data you use to identify your successes or areas for improvement in equity? I do see programs in my state that say equity a lot, but their demographics might tell a different story. So what we do different multiple prongs of data. So again, when I say, how do you measure equity, right? What we do is we use the Developmental Assets profile survey through the Search Institute. And so we do that survey, and we have our students fill it out twice a year. And so that gives us an idea of the number of assets, that they're able to account for in their lives. So the idea behind the developmental assets is, if you're 1 year old through 105, the more assets you have, the better it is. And so we use the developmental assets profile. We use, of course, our short cycle assessments, grades. We look at all those points, but we also consider attendance and then the intake information. So we integrate all these, especially when we talk about the daily check-ins as well. On average, our students were dropping in their daily check-ins in November and then again in March. And so what we did is we started implementing groups and different activities in October and end of September, beginning of October, to circumvent those drops. So between the daily check-ins, between the intakes, the developmental assets profile, our short cycle assessments, we look at different data points to look at, is what we're doing, is it working? And I can tell you that across the board, our students' scores academically are increasing. However, if you looked at us from a standpoint of, are all of our students at grade level? No. On average, our freshmen, about 60% of our freshmen, 65% of our freshmen come in at 3rd to 5th grade levels and in 9th grade. So if they increase by a year, we're doing what we need to do. And so some, of course, increase more than that. But 17% of our students were at grade level in 9th grade, and now we're up to 53% for our seniors, right? So again, is that growth fast enough? Excuse me, no. But when we say equity, and of course things, become sensationalized, social emotional learning is now sensationalized. And, as a social worker, I'm like, we've been doing this for years. It's how do we invest in each other? And so do students feel safe? Do they attend school? Are they making academic progress? Those are all the points also that we use for equity. We also have the equity councils now, but we also use tech leaders. So we have a representative from each advisory, and we meet with them once a month with the admin. And so again, you could say, okay, well, let's, create something for specific data, but we also say, what are the practices that operationalize what equity is and should be? And are those being put into action? That for me, in creating the CLR framework, was what we wanted to accomplish. So I hope that I talk a lot. So I hope that helped answer that question a little bit.
I also wonder if anyone has any questions specifically for our young people, for Jacqueline and Savannah.
Hi, is it okay if I just ask a question? All right, I've unmuted myself. You can hear me, obviously. So hi guys, my name is Jane. So Jacqueline and Savannah, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And I'm wondering, what do you see on the horizon? I mean, what opportunities do we have for young people to be co-educators, with our teachers? Because that's really what you are, right? In a class of 40, there are really, there's a teacher and there are 40 other educators there too. So what do you see on the horizon, and how can you continue this good work? I'll mute myself.
Oh. I know during our internship, we talked a lot about how it was going to be important when we went back to school, that we, the students, also advocated for our student reentry guide, and not just leave it up to the administration and our staff to keep us students in line. So a lot of what we talked about was making sure that our peers and ourselves were informed. And when a peer was maybe not following the rules or going against some things that we had suggested or that were implemented to our school, maybe to remind them like why we're doing what we're doing, why we want to focus on safety. And I think in a classroom sense, the same thing could be said. It's really important, like you said, when you have one teacher and students or 40 students in a classroom, all those students are co-educators and we are responsible and can help each other when one of us is succeeding and others are struggling. So I think that by informing students of this principle, like by telling them, keeping them in the loop, giving them the respect that they want. I know a lot of things I struggle in school with, or that I struggle with my teachers is sometimes I don't feel like they respect me the way that I respect them. And I feel like it's a kind of equal thing. I mean, obviously respecting your authority figure is important, but also being respected by that authority figure is just as important. So I feel like, nurturing an environment of respect amongst everyone could be a really important thing to keep educators, to inform educators that respecting their students is a really important thing. And it's not to say that educators don't know that already. It's more just like a reminder, you know, we have opinions, we have voices, we have the ability to help each other and help them. But sometimes I don't think that's really played out very well. So I feel like that could be a really great thing to do, just to nurture
Well, that was
respect.
great. Thank you. And I took a note. I'm right. I'm going to use that. I hope I'll try. I will give you credit for it. But nurturing an environment of respect is just really a really eloquent, beautiful way to put that. And you know, as respect can just be assumed, right? Because you're in that environment. But really, what the folks in this room are saying is that it needs to be operationalized, not just assumed, right? So, what are the ways that we can create that environment intentionally? And supported intentionally, and with really thought leaders like the two of you, right, and your team of educators, we can definitely do that and learn from you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jane, for the question. And I also just wanted to echo too that the guide that they put out has actually really informed practice moving into the virtual internship space for FFE and the X3 program, but also even for our leadership schools thinking about virtual engagement. And so one of the things that I've done, like I support health leadership in their internships, and we ran a fall internship experience that was called the Health Researcher Consultancy. And so we had an employer from a local evaluation firm be the employer mentor, really instilling and teaching research skills. But what's cool is from this guide and the work of Savannah and Jacqueline and their colleagues, we were really concerned about engagement virtually in this platform, especially for really heady, hard skills like that. And so one of the things that we shifted in practice was making sure that when the cohort of interns met, that we built in a session or a couple of sessions that was just SEL and like a mixture of check-in and fun, but also allowing the students to lead some of that fun and connectedness, right? Because like they said, it can feel really lonely and isolating, and the social component of school isn't there anymore. And so how can we bake that in? So Savannah, I was indebted to you because I leaned on you if you wanted to share the game that you helped lead.
Sorry, my mic wasn't unmuting. But so as Ali was talking about, we did the health researcher consultancy, and she asked me to help her come up with the game that could help us all stay connected. So I came up with like a game of like Pictionary. So we were all put into a group and we were able to just kind of socialize together virtually, just to take time away from our learning experiences, just to connect and have fun. And so within that game, we were able to take turns drawing pictures, and we could guess like what each other were drawing. And we also played that in the reentry plan internship, which really helped because none of us knew each other. So I feel like that was an icebreaker that we got to use and get to know each other while having fun.
So I know we have, well, actually no minutes. I think Henry will be telling us that we're out of time. But I appreciate each one of you. And also just, I appreciate all of you who stayed and participated in hearing about our path. And so I truly believe nothing, just happens for no reason, right? And things happen for a reason. And so I hope that our paths will cross. You'll reach out to us if you need anything. But to have schools that can talk about systemic racism, can talk about identity, can talk about what culture means, what lived experiences, mean, and you walk into the room with those as your authentic self, those are the things that we unapologetically do in our schools. And it's not clean, it's not pretty. Sometimes it's like how to facilitate a conversation about systemic racism or even the P word, which is privilege. So again, when you go along this path, just please reach out to us. We're not alone, even though we're alone maybe in our homes. But thank you.
Thank you, everybody.